going off topic.
Off topic?
You really off topic right now. Yo, you way off topic? How is it that everybody's over here and you way over there off topic?
All right, family. Welcome back to another episode of Going Off Topic with Brother Omowale. Today we have a very special guest. We have a good friend of mine, an associate, and a colleague. I don't know. What are the names that I can... a comrade, yeah, I mean, a good sister, a fellow warrior, yeah, I mean, a fellow general in the building. We have my sister, NfrKa. Sister Ness, I said Ness, whoa, early in the morning here. Nef. NfrKa. My apologies. I was just telling you behind the scenes, I had like a hectic night, you know what I mean, battling with the power outages. So you see, I'm doing the black coffee very early in the morning on my side of the world, but I know we got a bit of a time difference. You 6 hours ahead of me?
4 hours ahead, so it's afternoon. I've had a full day.
Okay. All right. So I mean, it's 8 a.m. My time, so I had a little bit of a interesting morning. So apologies. I try not to have too many brain farts. So let me just start this over. Ready? So how are you? How are you feeling this morning, Nef?
This afternoon?
Yeah, how are you feeling this afternoon, rather?
Yes, this afternoon I'm great. I am strong. I am blessed. I am clear, and I am just grateful. Like, I'm really thankful. I have been watching what you've been doing on your platform, and I'm really loving and respecting the movement forward that I'm seeing from what you've been sharing. So I'm excited. I'm excited about being here. I've been on the land, watering things on the farm, did a whole hair ritual. So my hair's all wet up under here.
It's all good.
After this.
It's all good. So you had your morning routine already done. You know what I mean? So you nice and grounded for this convo. So listen, I was telling you behind the scenes, the way we typically rock with these is I bring on interesting people who are content creators that are creating some type of content. Like, I do know that you have your High Tops Hills kind of platform that you're putting content out on, and I know you're going to start to produce going forward a bit more heavily on that channel. So typically, with my conversations, the beginning, I like to just get to know a little bit about you as a person and or a content creator, and then the second half we can kind of build on your content. You know, yeah, I mean, so let's start there. Who is Aust NeferKa, or who is did I am I messing it up? Yeah, it is. It's Aust NeferKa, right? And I said Nef off Africa to start. I see you ain't even correct me.
Yeah.
Well, help me out here, because I'm just used to calling you Nef, right? Mm-hmm. So help me out. Who is Aust NeferKa? I'm trying to give you a proper introduction.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because I've been even thinking about that. That's something that's been coming up lately. Just thinking about, like, I usually say just like that now you could call me Nef, and I feel like not everybody can be that intimate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes. I'm thinking, where do I even begin with that question? Because for me, I've been thinking a lot about identity in the context of really a reclaimed and liberated lens on the totality of, who I am in this life. And for me, I'm into nature's favorite daughter. I'm a sower of seeds that sprout. I'm a mother. Although I haven't, birthed, I feel like I should give that disclaimer. I haven't birthed any children yet in this life.
Yeah.
But I have birthed many, many things, and I raised many. So I really carry that as well, because my namesake, Aust, is, the great mother principle of, our ancestral perspective from that Kemetic ancient African perspective. Aust is, known for that immaculate conception.
Yeah.
And I feel I really resonate with that right now because of the reality that I haven't birthed children yet, but the things that have been birthed, really speak to that energetically.
Yeah.
And, I on a practical note, like I know that, people have to know who you are, what it is that you do, how to find you, how do you connect with the people who you're to align with. And, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm also a farmer, I'm a cultivator, I am a creator of many things beyond like the digital platforms. I create healing weapons. I create so many different things. I'm a healing artist, so I create music. I do many forms of sound healing. I'm a spiritual warrior, a revolutionary.
Yeah.
I'm a priestess. So these are all aspects of, what make me who I am, who I've become.
Hmm.
But I also feel like there's a lot of things that I've been,
Yeah.
to get here.
Well,
So
we'll go
yeah,
into that. We'll go into that. So I know that Aust, the name Aust comes from uh the I guess the maternal principle, right? From ancient Kemet, but Africa, or is it NeferKa?
Nefer,
Help me here. What is, because I just been calling you Nef. I've never inquired,
yes,
deeper to get an understanding. So NeferKa, where does this come from?
yes. NeferKa is two words technically in the Medu Neter, and the
Hmm.
Medu Neter is what the Greeks interpreted as the hieroglyphs, and what it means if we were to translate it into English is divine communication, Medu
Hmm.
Neter. So
Hmm.
within the Medu Neter, NeferKa are two glyphs, right? Two
Hmm.
symbols, and Nefer is translated as beautiful,
Hmm.
but it's also important to know the symbolism of it because it's really the wind instrument. It's symbolized by the lute, which looks like a guitar. That's literally what the Medu Neter for it looks like.
Hmm.
Um, which I actually might grab my card so I can actually show some things as they come up because I'm an educator too. Like that's like a real innate thing within me, which I
Hmm.
feel like is that mothering, nurturing side.
Okay.
Um, but so Nefer is beautiful, but it's also, it's that musical element. So
Hmm.
that's why that aspect of my, purpose and my essence is very strong. And Ka is symbolized by the hands raised, and Ka is translated as spirit.
Hmm.
I see that translation in the context of like, we still kind of, put your hands up, the whole hands up, don't shoot. Um, it really just speaks to the continuation of that ancestral perspective because I really feel the reason why this symbolizes spirit is because of surrender. It's a humbling, it's a, you put your hands up, it's an adoration as well.
Yeah.
So beautiful spirit in short.
Okay. All right. So let's how'd you let's talk about your journey to becoming, right? Because we all start from somewhere. I wasn't always Omowale Africa. You know what I mean? That, I know that naming is a part of our journey into consciousness, and sometimes we take on different names depending on where we are in our journey. So let's talk about your journey into becoming Aust NfrKa, right? So like
Yeah.
just wherever you want to start from, you can go back as early as you want and bring me forward, or you know,
Yeah.
let me know if you need me to make the question a bit more pointed, or if
No,
how I've given it. Let me know if that's enough for you to work with.
I love the storytelling element. Where to begin, before the beginning. Like I didn't come out the womb with a head wrap. I like to tell people that like, it's been a journey. It really has been. I didn't come into a conscious family. So, you know, it was just, city girl. I grew up in Boston. I was born in Boston, but my parents are both actually from here where I'm at currently, which is Cabo Verde, which is a archipelago, 10 different islands. But they were both born on this island. And my journey to becoming has been ongoing, right? Because there's been like different waves of circumstances and situations that have happened. But I think that the real like catalyst that really like created the transformation, like the radical transformation, which, ancestrally that transformation process or becoming is symbolized by the scarab beetle or the kepera in
Yeah.
our language.
Mhm.
So that part, like that actual like birthing or rebirthing that was triggered was from my return back home here.
Mm.
So this was about 8 years ago. Yeah, about 8 years ago. My
So
partner and I,
2014.
yeah, 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about 2013. And, I was living in New York because prior to coming here 2 years ago, like at the cusp of the whole pandemic situation, I was in New York for 9 years
Yeah.
and really active there doing the work. But I had been in New York for about a year, 2 years.
Hmm.
I think I've actually been in New York since 2012. So I had met my partner, Preston. I may refer to him as Rageb sometimes, but Preston and I met in New York. And there were a couple of circumstances that happened. Like I was really in my like Sex in the City delusion of like, being in the city, like literally in my dream job, working at Manolo Blahnik, interning, about to get a position and, partying, doing my thing, fly city girl stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the situation at Manolo Blahnik had taken a different turn because I was an intern, but you're dealing with like, it was a very like catty, it was very much like Devil Wears Prada. Like
Hmm.
they just that type of like situation. It was very different from the way people would normally think about it because there were a lot of like, there were African women, there were Hispanic women and Black women who were, the account executives that I was working with directly, but it was still that type of like cattiness. And, I was showing up to work, to the T's, really like with my
Yeah.
heels on, coming
You
in
were
like,
playing a
this is
part.
my job.
Yeah,
But
playing a
they
part.
were more so like in a space of like, just kind of complacent and entitled. So, rolling to work in like pajamas, looking like anything. So there was already like a tension there, but because I have such a strong work ethic
Yeah.
and I'm so dynamic. Like I'm literally like there's very few things that I do that I'm
Hmm.
not going to be great at because
Yeah.
I'm gonna seek to be great at it.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm passionate about it. And at that time I was really passionate about that space, shoes, footwear. I had been working in footwear since I was in Boston before I moved to New York, going into like the high-end retail space. And I just loved it. I genuinely love the art of footwear, especially Manolo Blahnik. It's very, it's art. It's art. It's not shoes that are designed for, practicality or
Yeah.
functionality. They're
Yeah.
literally art.
Yeah.
So I came with a different energy, and long story short, I was just like, I'm gonna just take what's mine. I remember going in the elevator and going to the president of the company because he would always see me in the elevator, and it was the type of work environment. It was like, if George gets in the elevator, everybody gets out the elevator,
Yeah.
like, and let him go up by himself. And I'm saying this part of the story just to give a gist of like the essence of who you are always remains the same.
Yeah.
Because we always are who we are. But like I said, it was the becoming,
Yeah.
like to really wash the stains, and really reveal like the essence of who I am. And I remember getting in the elevator with him, even though they would be so mad, like, and I would just like talk to him. He'd be like, "Oh, when do you finish school?" And like, yeah, we definitely gotta hire you. Like, you're so beautiful, all these things. It's a gay man, just
Yeah. Yeah.
having dialogues with him. So I remember, well, he told me like when I was ready for a job, I could get a job, and I'm ready for a job. So, I'm good with this this internship shit. because they had already renewed my internship. But I really I was just like, I was going for what I thought I wanted at that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I go up to his office. He tells me, great, I'm going to call in. Flo was like his right hand man. And, he calls in the people to confirm I'm great, da da da. Cool. They approved me on the job, but they just did some sly shit on the side. I don't know what happened, but they bashed me, and I can't call and not go through them. So I
Yeah.
just broke the chain of command and
Yeah.
just the rules of engagement
Yeah.
in that space. But that was such a big thing for me because I was literally creating exactly what I wanted, and everything was happening and unfolding, and life was great, and things were moving up, and everything was happening. And then it was like, boom, I thought I had this job lined up. These sisters just blocked me.
Yeah.
And I was just out of a job. It really brought me down. I don't like
Yeah.
to use the word depression so much, from
Yeah.
a clinical perspective. But just really being in that space of being down and just questioning everything. And I remember Preston was just like, let's just go somewhere, let's just go out the city. Let's go to the countryside. Let's go to Florida, somewhere warm, and just take 3 months and just figure out what it is that we really want, because he had come from seeing me in such a high in that first year of our relationship, because we had been together for a year, and then to see, all of that happening. And Preston's always been supportive. He's an artist. He always encouraged me to just go within myself. That was something he always would encourage me, even from that point of just create, you're an.
All right. All right. All right. You went out just for a second. Don't worry about it. So you were just saying where Preston was encouraging you, telling you he's an artist, so just telling you to create, you know what I mean, and go within you.
Yeah. And he just always Preston's such a huge part of my story and becoming who I am, because his constant compliment, and also his mirror, him allowing me to see myself, who I've always been, but I would have never called myself an artist. I would have never, I was at first, initially, when I was at Boston University, I was studying to, concentrate in accounting at the School of Business and Management. I just never saw the innate artistic nature that I have.
We have so
Until
many.
I meet this person, and I'm just like, oh, I guess I am an artist. He's like, yeah, look at this, and look at how you do that, and look.
We have so much our past is so similar, you know what I mean? And we have so many similar experiences, you know what I mean, whether it be with corporate America or you went to a pretty prestigious university. I did as well. I never say what university I went to, but the background was in accounting as well. But what I'm hearing,
drop out though, I do want to say that.
oh, listen, we all, our journey is our journey, but I'm just saying, the energies resonate. You know what I mean? When I'm listening to you tell your story about, your intern story, I remember my intern story. So without giving too much detail, right? So they used to have this event for all of the interns of color, right? So they would take us, fly us out somewhere to a nice resort or something like that, where it's all about, getting you onboarded into corporate America. You know what I mean? Really laying out the red carpet for you. So they bring out all the who's, all the partners. And the chairman of the firm was, the key speaker for the last day of the event or whatever. So I remember emailing, right? I emailed the chairman of the firm before he spoke, just to introduce myself or whatever, and tell kind of who I was. And this is me, as I guess I was an intern, or I don't know, maybe I was a new hire at that point. I don't really recall. It was so early on in my career, but I emailed him, right? So when he went to speak the next day, during his his speaking engagement, he kind of pulled me up and just gave me a shout out. You know what I mean? Just for showing the initiative or whatever. So I was always
The energy.
The energy is great. I'm just saying, I was just always doing things that like, that set me apart. Like I was on a very uh how did they call it? Like a fast track. You understand what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
within corporate America. And I think that a lot of goals that I had early on, I could have definitely hit them, but spiritually and socially, I started to be pulled in a different direction, right? Because I don't know if you ever saw my documentary, but I talk about on there. I had the opportunity to be out in Silicon Valley and meeting with billionaires and just being, I had the opportunity to pitch companies to them and things like that. And then my mindset early on, it was like, yo, I'm trying to build $1 billion company. And this is before within like I think like within hip hop cultures, startup culture kind of like we always catch on to things late. But I was
Mhm.
in a space where I was kind of like already hip to these things very early. So in my mindset, it was always like, I'm gonna get to $1 billion. I'm either gonna like take the private equity route, or I'm gonna take the venture capital route, or I'm gonna build a company and I'm gonna sell it for X amount of dollars. Like this was my mindset and this was my ambition, and I was working towards executing that plan. I'm kind of like you, like whatever I set mindset, my mind to, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do it. But as I'm going through the process, I think what happened first, first I started to get pulled in like a political direction, like was pulling me away from the business, but I'm still doing the business at the same time, right? I'm still trying to drive the
Mhm.
business forward, but I'm paying attention to what's happening in politics and how our community is being ignored. And it started to frustrate me because I'm like, why the hell like are they like playing games with us like this? So I started to try to use my voice like in a small way and trying to figure, because I've always had like an organizing background because I was a non-traditional student. Like so before I returned to university, I had a lot of time in the community kind of figuring things out. I didn't go right to college after high school, which was
Okay.
one of the biggest blessings that I could have not
Yeah.
foresaw, but it worked out so amazing for me and for my life. But so long story short, I'm getting involved in like the grassroots political work to try to get something done for our community. And then I think 2016, I think it's 2016 happens where you get the Alton Sterling and the Philando Castile joint that happens like back to back. And
Mhm.
those two incidents like really were like, when you talk about the catalyst for complete transformation, they were the catalyst for me that like was like, yo, at that time it was like my skill set is not meant to be building $1 billion organization. Like, yeah, I can build it, but I need to be focused on building an organization that's focused on like the liberation of my people. So I started going in a different direction in terms of like educating myself, and reading and learning. And like I've been kind of like locked in this space for a very long time. And it's only recently, and it's funny because I was talking to you because I think we have a similar backstory where you talked about how you negated that business part of yourself and was like, because you're doing this work, you started to like throw that away. But
Yeah.
now it's like I'm starting to see, okay, how my business mind complements what I do
Exactly.
organizationally. So it's like now I'm coming back. I don't want to say full circle, but now I'm starting to slowly bring things back into play, and they just become different instruments, right? Different
Mhm.
weapons and my arsenal. So I'm not necessarily trying to like build $1 billion company or anything at this point, but now my goals are still honed on the liberation of our people, but economically, in terms of economic independence and building networks and building organizations that can be self-sustaining. Now I'm applying that skill set or that mindset to this work. So when I
Mhm.
connect with you, I'm like, yo, we are so similar, just our stories and our trajectory. It's really interesting.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, really like at the vantage point I have now, right? Like I feel like I'm at the mountaintop. I'm literally at the mountaintop. But it's like,
Physically, you are literally on a mountaintop.
yeah. Well, I'm in the foothills, like yeah, kind of like on the rise. Like this whole island is a mountain.
Yeah, you
So
like 2,000 feet
keep
above,
going.
like above sea level where you at, right? Like you pretty high
Yeah,
up there.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
2,000 miles above sea level. Everything here is mountainous on this particular island. It's interesting because these islands, each one has a different, unique, um, just terrain.
yeah,
Like there's one island that has the capital called Praia, which means beach. It's literally more of that beachy, like, white sand. Here it's like black sand beach. It's just a whole different energy. And I'm glad that that has come up because I just feel like, like the spirit of it all is feeling like, because, I'm talking about the story and it's like we live many lives within this one life.
yeah,
And then we've lived many lives before this life and many lives will come after. Um, and I feel like just the reality of like knowing everything has always happened for a reason, even when you weren't conscious of it, because that's big. That's big, like to know every experience that happened, whether I'm thinking about like when I was interning at Harvard Business School when I was still in Boston, like
yeah,
just like certain things that you get a window into because you're gonna need that. It's like, yeah, hold that, like retrieve that.
yeah,
There's a lot of those things within my story, and I'm so thankful to stand where I am now because I feel fully integrated in my set and Heru, like my higher and lower self is
mm,
very, consolidated. And that's a really important thing because a lot of times when people come into like spirituality and spiritual, awakening, there becomes
detachment.
some people get captured by like the new age
Yeah, yeah,
new age side of it where it's just like
you
letting
get real
people live.
eerie and just get like
Yeah,
whisked away into the ethers, and it's like no, you gotta stay grounded as well.
you
We're
need the
here.
gravity. That's exactly what the lower self is. It's the gravity. Like you have to have the complementarity, the complementary energy, ma'at. And that's like our ancestral, like that rooting is so important because when you don't come into spirituality from a rooted place, you do like, it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to be this thing and I'm going to act like none of that's there. And then you have this crazy shadow following you around and you're really not that. And it's constantly trying to expose itself. And a
Yeah,
lot of people deal with that schism within their lives, and then they're trying to portray something else, and it's
yeah,
not authentic. And I feel like a lot of people can smell that, but we're also in a space where there's so much social engineering and so much just fraudulence that some people don't. They can't tell. They can't distinguish the real from the fake. So
especially the youth because they've grown up in the metaverse, right? They've lived in such a fake world. I mean, like think about it like this: if you're 24,
yeah,
you have 10 years of your formative development on social media. You understand what I'm saying? Like you grew up on Instagram, so your sense of self and how you identify the world and your experiences have all been largely through these digital platforms. Like even when you're having physical experiences like in high school and things like that, so much of high school culture today is driven by what's happening on social media. So if you're
online.
not popping on social media, you're probably not popping in real life. Like so it's like they aren't necessarily grounded from the beginning. And what happens is I feel like it becomes a situation where when they come in the spirituality, they come at it from like a escapist perspective, right? So it becomes like all moon rocks and crystals and magic and witches, and it's like just purely new age stuff that
Mhm.
is detached from the practicality of it all or
Yeah.
the history of it all in terms of how our ancestors kind of like engage with these practices. You understand what I'm saying? Like so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that rooting, and I like to distinguish rooting from grounding
Hmm.
because you also need to be grounded as well. And that's something that's different. I feel like that's like the practical side, but the rooting is really like, where am I in the continuum? Like what do I stand on and what am I lifting? To constantly be in that state of centering between, both sides, the complementary energies. And I feel like, yeah, in my story, when I think about you know, even like from that, like coming home, that's why coming home was so big for me. I had never even considered it. Preston was just like, oh, why don't we just go there? I've always wanted to go there. You got family there, your dad's there. I'm like, I don't know, it never occurred to me, but I was like, all right, fine. One-way ticket. And we came, we stayed for almost a year. And that was the year that changed everything. I just
2013 was the year.
Yeah. And just like, you know, and it was progressive, like, right, like I was saying, like things were happening, right? Even meeting Preston, like I said, that was a big part of it. But like I resonated with what you said about like my spirit was just trying to take me somewhere else. And at that point, there was just so much noise that I couldn't really hear my spirit. I just heard my mind and the stains on my mind, right? Like what I wanted. It wasn't my purified mind, because there's nothing wrong with the mind, but it's just the programming was really trying to guide me. Yeah.
It's like a breakthrough, right? Because we all, when we reanimate on this particular sphere, we're all sitting here with a cosmic assignment. But
Exactly.
within this particular sphere, like this is the matrix, right? The programming is real, the social engineering is real. So your mind is captured, and it's like, these are the things I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, like, I'm supposed to be becoming a billionaire. I'm supposed to be living like this and private jets and amongst the who's. I'm supposed to be a mover and a shaker. So it's like you are trying to carry out that particular program, but then what happens is you get that glitch in the matrix, like something breaks through and it starts to tug and pull at you. And for me, when I just look back at my life in general, because you talked about living many lives, like I've lived many different lives, you know what I mean? Because like I said, I didn't go straight to college, so I've had some I've had some very interesting experiences, right? Just growing up and becoming who I am. But as I look back through each of these iterations of who I am today, there've always been moments where this particular energy was pulling at me to try to like break me out of the matrix, and I just ignore and just keep smacking my head on the wall. I'm like, no, I'm going in this direction. And sometimes it requires something to sit you down and to have you reflect. And in that moment, that voice speaks to you and says, this is the direction you're supposed to be going. You're not supposed to be going in that direction. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'm not going front. Sometimes because I'm human, right? Sometimes I look back, and I don't want to say I look back with regret, but sometimes I look back and question, like, man, I wonder what things would have been like, if I stayed on that path. You understand what I'm saying? But then
Yeah.
I think about it, and I'm like, well, this is the path that I'm meant to be. I'm meant to be traveling. You understand? And like the riches that I will mine here are going to be of more benefit for me and my community and my children than any riches that I could mine on that other path. So it's like just the duality of it is sometimes it's tough. Like,
Yeah. It's so interesting because like just in response to like what you shared, so much came up for me. Like just the philosopher, like, you know, that's why I said like there's so many identities. Like how do you even, capture all that you are? And it's like everything that we're doing is constantly to limit ourselves by defining ourselves. And as you were speaking about that, like I just felt like, just it's very important for us to know that where we are and everything that we do and everything that we've done is always what is supposed to be. But there's nothing wrong with looking back and being like, I would have, because that would have, you can bring that to the present and create from that, because everything happens for a reason. So it's like, if you don't look back at certain things, especially with trauma, because I think that that's a big part of my story. With trauma, you have to look back. You have to know why that happened, because our spirit consistently aligns us with the things that we need to tune our character for us to accomplish that mandate, like for us to remember it, right? Because some people don't come in with that memory, but I feel like a lot of the people that are coming in right now, a lot of these young these young spirits, these ancestors that are being reborn, like,
Old spirits,
huh?
old spirits, and new bodies,
Yeah.
because
And
they
they're just
are the.
through very, like, they got the eye of the tiger,
Mm-hmm.
because they're coming in when the planet is already at a higher frequency. Like, we're constantly moving, we're constantly moving through this galaxy, through the universe, and the space that we are moving into, everything is rising.
Yeah.
And they're just coming in with such a high, like, high consciousness already, that they're not really aligning with the same things that some of us, and even like our parents and the previous generations, had to go through some real things to become that. They're kind of inheriting, they're inheriting the baton. Everything is just continuing.
Yeah.
So when I think about like the traumas I experienced, my spirit came fine-tuned already to a certain extent, because like ancestrally there's the concept of Meshkinet. And Meshkinet is the birthing house. But Meshkinet is the energy and the force of nature, or of the divine. It's that divine force. It's part of that like motherly energy, but it's specifically the one that really molds the spirit while it's in the womb. And she's like the midwife that is birthing, right? And think of this symbolically, obviously. The midwife that's birthing the spirit and bringing the spirit forward, but she's also defining, right? She's deciding how to align this spirit within that grand scheme of totality, right? So that it's perfectly aligned with certain energies, right? The natal chart, and thinking about the astrology. A lot of us are disconnected from the astronomy, and just like, that's one of our greatest ancestral wisdoms, is as above, so below. So, when I think about like, why is it that for me, it's not easy, but I'm just created in a way where like I dig deep, like I really go into trauma, and I'm really gonna go in. And a lot of people don't have that. But for me, it's because the positioning of Pluto in Scorpio at the exact minute that I came out my mother's womb. Like, how do we, not see the significance of like the energetic imprint that we come in with? Because like, we're already geared in a certain way. And I think that that's really important right now, because they've used individualism to separate us so much, but we can really use the essence of what makes us unique as part of figuring out how we come together.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how I see myself. Like, so I'm saying like, what my affinity to dealing with trauma puts me in a position to support others in going into themselves to heal. And it also allows me to serve as a testimony, right? To be in a living example of, witnessing my grandfather murdered when I was 4 years old. And really dealing with that though, because for many years I didn't allow myself to remember that, because my 4-year-old mind could not process that trauma, so it became a mechanism. But I started noticing that that was necessary for me, and even now it becomes necessary, because there's something in my mind that, because of that experience, allows me to not like I can remove something from my mind like that, and that allows me to stay focused. That's created like a degree of focus that I never would have really got. Like, how did I become that way? It's not anything about how I was raised. It's the experiences. Every experience creates something significant about the way you are.
Yeah.
Sexual trauma, molestation. These are things I've experienced, and so many abortion. There's so many things that our collective spirit is recycling so much trauma that we really gotta turn in to that darkness, and like the things we don't want to talk about, the things we don't want to think about. And we really have to heal, because those are where the gems are. Those are where the treasures are. because that's how you become. So that's a big part of like why I'm here as I am now after that trip, you know, just to tie it back to just like coming back home. I never went back the same. It was the land, it was the nature, like it was an initiation. Like I didn't go back the same and I had to do something. I learned about Kemet here, you know, and when I went back and I figured and I found out there was like, I'm like, wait, this consciousness? Like what? Like people knew this? Like how did no one ever, like how did it never, you know, because you find out about like the whole conscious community. Like I was in New York and I didn't know any of that stuff. So when I went back, I've been back home. I was like, I gotta go to the community centers I used to ball at and talk to the people that I know and say, I wanna come and teach the children. Preston and I created the Sankofa program based on who we are, right? The reality of like Preston being a photographer, me, my marketing background. We've started teaching the children digital storytelling basics, right? We're in a digital world. They have to be able to like figure out how to be authentic within that. But it was all based on the pre-colonial African story, right? Our story, and teaching them about the things that I had to learn in the closet. Like I had to come here at 20, I have to be 23 and learn this. So to be able to bring that to a child that is growing up in the hood, just like me, and they have that information earlier on, that was so important for me.
How do we
Yeah.
how do we this is just as because you're sharing a lot here.
Yeah.
Because
Let me name
no, please don't, like let it flow, because I think that is necessary, because somebody is going to get something from this, you know what I mean? Somebody may have a
I'm certain of
catalyst
it.
moment that may lead them on their own journey to transformation from this confirmation, so, or from this conversation, right? I said confirmation, so maybe that wasn't a Freudian slip, maybe that's what needed to be
Yeah.
said. Right, but I wanted to ask a question about power and obedience, but before I get into that, you kind of talked about our youth being exposed to things earlier, and like within this digital age that we live in, or the so-called information age, the cycle of information and knowledge moves so fast that I feel like people get information fatigue. And I think that is dangerous, because I think that with information fatigue, we start throwing babies out with bathwater. Like, for an example, I remember in the early 2000s, you know, conspiracy information. Like I remember, I think I picked up the Hold a Pale Horse. I think I might have gotten that book like in 2006. I had the book, or maybe 2005. I purchased the book Behold a Pale Horse. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that was like one of the conspiracy theory classics. But this is during the time when everybody's talking about the Illuminati and just like the different energies, the different families. So it's like, okay, I go on that trajectory, then I go on the religious trajectory, and it's like you're picking up all this information, but what happens is I feel like it becomes like you get like burnout or overload from the information. And what I mean by that is that when you look at the current generation, like I feel like the Gen Zers are currently burnt out on wokeness, right? Because you got like this artificial conscious movement that came
Yeah.
on the social media where everybody was woke. And so you had good in there, but you also had a lot of poison in there. But people like consume so much of it, is like, okay, we're burnt out on that now. So it's like, what's the next thing? You understand what I'm saying? And I think that there's a danger in just consuming things in like a nutrient deficient way. You understand what I'm saying? It's like you've consumed this information, but maybe all of the nutrients weren't in it, so like it never became a part of you. It just became something that's just like a fad, or like the taste of the day. And
It's just
now
information.
that when you need it and when you need to draw from it, you no longer have access to it because your mind has like, I've been there, done that. Does that make sense to you? It's
Yeah.
like when
I
you're coming into this
experienced that.
information earlier on, does that like, hopefully I'm saying what I'm trying to say correct.
Yeah. I've experienced that so much with more so, yeah, I would say not with the children. Because
Mhm.
the thing is, like, when I came back, it was such a tremendous intake of wisdom. Like, it was literally just wisdom. And it was beyond the wisdom that you gain through experience. It was really just like, oh
Mm,
shit. Like, I don't know how to like describe it other than like I just absorbed so much in an instant.
mm.
Like, and
Like a real awakening.
yeah, but still like researching, seeking, but it was like even through the digital world, like you said, it's like it was a lot of consumption for me even in coming into that. But it was a very guided consumption. And I wanna raise something really important here because the spirit of Baba Heru, who's one of my elders, has been coming up very strongly. One, because he was a significant part of me retrieving and, giving me my name, my soul name, for this life. And he also is the one who had shared with me the significance of how their system is based on our truth, like just the truth, the cosmic reality. Enter becomes the root of many words, nature, natureza, in many languages. But they sometimes want us to limit that to like the earth, the planetary nature, not nature as in the whole universe and the cosmos, but
Mm,
Nter is divinity.
yeah.
Baba Heru had told me, look at it, it's the internet. Look at it, it's HTTP, right? Hetep. When you think about the foundation, like there's so many subtle things about like, because we sometimes think like, oh, they don't have power. They really don't have power. They have control because we're giving them our power. But within the reality of even navigating the digital world, your spirit can guide you. My ancestors the energies were bringing me the information that I needed, and I was eating it up, but I was chewing it and I was digesting it. So by
Yeah.
the time I came back to come and work with the youth, I may not have been conscious of who I like, really like the fullness of the sanctity of what I am, but I was just moving in what I knew at that, because you always have exactly what you need. You don't need more than what you have, right? Going back to like consumption and capitalism, and just like they want us to feel like we need more, so you're seeking and you're not doing with what you have.
Mm,
And the reason why I bring that up is because when I came back, like there was a deep analysis, and in terms of like, we're not just going to go ahead and move into teaching the children, right? That's not the spiritual warriorship model even, right? So also lifting my sister Kepra Ma'at Teteru, because she modeled with youth in New Bedford the spiritual warriorship self-initiation. And part of that goes from like, you start within the space of like authenticity and making sure you're moving in truth. You come into awareness of something, but you're supposed to really shift and spiral into healing, and then unity, and then action. And a lot of people, they become aware of something, they just move in and go and do it. There was
yeah.
a lot of analysis before stepping into the work. I went to the children for one, because that just makes the most sense. Like, you're dealing with the future. Like, sometimes we're putting a lot of our energy in the wrong place. And I wanted to be very strategic. So going to the children, but also dealing with the reality of capitalism. Like, you have to, if they're already being bombarded with information, because that's the distraction, right? They know that everything right now is here. Like this, if they get you here, they're going to control what you create within your life. So all that information is happening. We overstand that, especially coming in from the space of marketing, where like they're constantly trying to sell you shit on top of that. Never mind just the overall like spiritual enslavement. But we really wanted to create a curriculum and a model of connecting with the children that really overstood their mind and their processing and what their environment and what they were experiencing already was. So it's like, all right, they do want to, they care about phones, they care about social media and different things like that. Or they're going to very soon, right? Because some of those children that I work with, they're now, in high school or middle school. And when I think about just like being able to connect with the children and teach them something that is still geared towards digital storytelling, but it's about creating. It's not about consuming. So we're giving them information, but it's all through a lens of having them create art through it. So they created videos, like they create ways to retell the story that you're telling them. But the way that we even told them the story was really starting with where they are right now. Sometimes we just want to go back to Ethiopia and go and tell them about, the origins of humanity, But we started with hip hop. We started with, like, because I said we were just being true to ourselves as well. Like, we started with showing them digital storytelling. This is how they're showing you right now. What do these things have in common? We show the Nicki Minaj's and and they can start to see that the story they're being told right now has a pattern, something that they are not conscious of initially, because most of them, they don't have parents who are monitoring what they watch or who are showing them how the media is weaponized. So we're able to, like, that becomes the first step because they can connect to that. They care about that. And then you begin to shed some of the layers and you can go in. So you go from where we are now and you work your way backwards. Because I find that when you teach people about the ancient, they're just like, well, how did we get here now? Or we were so great.
The disconnect.
Like, it's just become a different
the disconnect.
reality.
Let's talk for a second here about power and obedience, because you as a spiritual warrior have a discipline that I admire. You also have a kind of just a knowing, right? You walk in a knowing in terms of who you are and the energy, right? The power of the energy that you possess. But I think that in order to even cultivate that, it requires, as you said, surrender or submission or obedience.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the duality of that there?
So glad that you brought that up. Both of those things have to coexist, because when we're dealing with everything, right? Everything, totality, like, to me, that's how I perceive the truth. You can never have the truth if you don't have everything. So when you're looking at everything, for me, the basis of everything is Ma'at, right? The synthesis. To be able to look at the whole thing, you have to look at the full spectrum. So sometimes we do that through extremes, which is what people consider like that balancing act. But you're not really seeking to just be balancing. You actually want to establish the equilibrium. So within obedience and control, we choose where to navigate within a moment based on the centering of knowing, like, what's at the center of these two things. And for me, it just came from, like, really going like this, right? Like, okay, I have power. But with power, there's a lot of responsibility. You have to have control. You have to have discipline. But what's the purpose, right? Putting meaning on it, which is a huge aspect of, like, us really being able to root ourselves into our cosmic African mind, is really to seek meaning in everything, which requires us to slow down extremely from the pace that we've been programmed into, because we're in a situation where they just want us to keep moving so that we don't think. We just do what they want us to do based off of the strings that are being pulled. So we really have to slow down. My perspective on it is, like, through that stillness, through a pause, through a retreat, dormancy, right? Going back to the wisdom of the land and of nature itself, like nothing just continuously grows. And everything grows in cycles. So it's going to come around. You have to go up and come down, up and come down. So that's like the ebb and flow. And I think Mama Marimba Ani speaks about it in the context of us having like this back and forth between Sankofa and Ma'at,
Hmm.
Sankofa and Ma'at.
She goes,
So
Ma'afa Sankofa is her paradigm, the cycle.
mhm,
Ma'afa Sankofa. Ma'afa Sankofa is the paradigm.
yes, thank you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just feel like when it comes to like obedience and surrender, in my experience, it's been like when it's about your life. Like that's what I really feel is very important for people to get. Like it gets deep, yes. The closer you get to the truth, the simpler it is. So within that reality, like you can still simplify it to life, you know? The Ankh carriers, right? When you look at Kemets and you see everyone wearing these Ankhs, like that's what it's about. And sometimes we're not really seeing the forest through the trees. We get caught up in different aspects of our personality, and we're not realizing that everything is talking to you constantly.
Mm,
But are you listening? So obedience becomes possible when you're able to even hear the guidance and listen to it, and then you can move. Because I feel like one of the big things that's been coming to me, like in this last moon cycle, has just been we do we really have, control, of we have choice, but like I feel like what I'm realizing is that we only really choose how long it takes because there is a predestination and we're creating it. But for us, it's important for us to remember that while we're all unique expressions doing our own thing, there's this whole divine map and plan that we're a part of. So when we come back to that totality, that everything is everything and everything is one, then it is what it is. So regardless of like this idea of control and power that we've been indoctrinated into is different from the reality of the power that we have, which holds both. It's like, yes, you can create. Yes, you can choose. You have will, but, but,
but
or
uh-huh.
and is better. And it's not about you. So there's always like that's why sometimes people have
That's
like
deep.
these.
That's deep right there for a second. It's not about you part, because
Mhm.
the way that the human ego is built up is like we are the most significant thing in the cosmos. You understand? It's like, no,
Yeah.
we are no different than the ant. You understand? When you start understanding that everything is one, like you are a part of something, right? But it's not about. I think we feed so much into our ego. Our ego becomes almost like this protective barrier, right? The way that we project ourselves kind of like into the world. But in order to experience true growth, you actually have to peel that thing back and kind of like expose yourself and to be vulnerable, right? Because you can't tap into the real power while being tapped into the fake power, right? The ego is the fake power, it's the projection. You understand what I'm saying? But the real
Mhm.
power, the real source is not, it's not in that ego, right? And I think that when you're operating from that ego, the ego is insecure. So when you come in contact with people who have power, like it may make you insecure, you may feel
Mhm.
smaller. You understand what I'm saying? But when you're operating from the true
Yeah.
source, then you see the divine in me will recognize and respect the divine in you, right? The divine in me then starts to understand that, oh, I'm connected to the divinity of it all, right? This is just my avatar. When I spawned or respawned into this present reality. This is just the avatar that carries me, but this is not me. You understand what I'm saying? And I think
Yeah.
that a lot of us get caught up. We think that this is not, you are, this is your projection, but this isn't you, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, and it's, but it is too, like it is, and because that's what becomes like the spiritual psychosis of the new age, is like to make people focus on spirituality as if it excludes the physical reality.
Mm,
And that's because a lot of us are not coming from, like, not all of us, because there are many people on this planet who are existing within nations that have have solid culture, and they know the spiritual dimension. They have seers in the village, you know. So, but for us, for most of us who were colonized in the divided states of America, we don't have that, you know, book that's going to describe the various layers and dimensions that exist and how we navigate within that. And we're not looking at it whole. So people are dividing like the physical from the spiritual, but it is all one. And I think that that's the important part, because the power is about bringing that through this, because this is a gift. This is very powerful,
mm,
you know. But that's why our ancestors always like were lifting knowledge of self,
mm.
knowledge of self, because when you realize that this is the gift and that this is very powerful, you can go back into remembering the ultimate power was really choosing to come in that form.
Wow.
That's the thing that I feel like I retrieved, and that's the thing that if I would say, if you're going to seek anything, seek to remember that.
Mm.
Because when you remember why you chose to come, you'll remember what you are and where
Sheesh.
you came from.
Hold on. That's heavy. That's heavy. Let's talk about because we're talking about assignment, right? I know that you have a lot of projects that you are working on, a lot of celestial bodies that you are birthing, right? That you are giving to the
Mhm.
universe, right? So let's talk about some of these projects that you are currently involved in. You can start anywhere you want to go and take it up to high tops and hills, like however you want to go.
Yeah, I will start with Tehuti Ma'at, because Tehuti Ma'at is, you know, it's the new it's the new world order, as they
Mhm,
would put it. You know, they
mhm,
call it the new world order. Their old world order, the European world order, or disorder. Excuse me. I
mhm.
really have
Yeah.
to get clear. So I always say that the disorder that they've created has been prophesized, like it will be replaced. And when we think about that from the ancestral perspective, that is bringing forward the reign of Tehuti, or Tehuti Ma'at. And Tehuti being cosmic intelligence, wisdom, communication, connection, and Ma'at being truth, order, reciprocity, morality, and so many other words, right? It's so beautiful to me when I think about, like, in this colonized tongue, you have to use about 20 words to describe one vibration that we had ancestrally, you know, which already says a lot
Mm,
around communication. But within the reality of like thinking about these as universal forces, right? Because sometimes people think about them like they're deities, and that is also another one of the most problematic spiritual um, aspects of our spiritual enslavement that we have to deal with, and also with that like God concept as well, because it becomes about this deitizing or this externalizing that is problematic. And these are forces, these are universal cosmic forces. What we've been experiencing is akin to an eclipse, you know, because that's literally how our ancestors really show that. It's not, an eclipse doesn't happen for a long time. So when we look at the scope of our story, what we've been experiencing, this dark age, is not really much. It's just an eclipse, but it's an eclipse always energetically reveals and opens you up to something to heal in a very, very profound way. Because you're dealing with that shadowing. So you have to deal with something that's not really in the light. It's like it can't be seen per se. And none of these are inherently good or bad. That's the other thing. It's just complementary. So I wanted to say that about Tehuti Ma'at because it's really it's beyond the cooperative instrument that we've created. What my mandate is to bring that forward in the most practical sense of how can that be birthed in the reality that we're experiencing right now, to be able to facilitate the transition from what we've been in, this disorder and chaos, to come into Ma'at, cosmic order and wisdom. So I'm saying that, and I'm bringing it back in because this is not for everyone. Like this work is not for everyone. A huge aspect of Tehuti Ma is also exclusivity. Like there's certain aspects of the work we're doing internally that's not forward facing at all. And the reality is, like, people who have come for this came for this.
Yeah.
And they'll align with it.
That exclusivity part is so essential. There's a wisdom in that, right? Because I think that sometimes we want to just be all inclusive, right? Everybody, like, it's just like, oh, well, you're being elitist, like, because you're leaving people out. And because, this is a conversation that came up early on. One of the projects I've been working on, Cobra Calisthenics, where we are trying to develop kind of like an exemplar in terms of what African manhood means. And as we've been having these conversations early on, somebody was like, well, this definition kind of excludes some men. And I'm like, well, it should, right? Like, I think that, like, when we talk about like creating standards that are exemplary, like not everybody is going to be able to meet that standard. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. You know what I mean? I think that if we look at what we presently have, I don't think that we should get in the practice of lowering our standards. I think that in order to create or to bring things, into the future, like you have to, I don't know, you have to push beyond where we presently are, and a lot of us are not there. So I don't know if it's good to just be like, we're going to devalue or lower the quality or the expectation because certain people, can't meet it. So I don't know if I'm bringing that forth correct, but I just think that the spirit of exclusivity is also real, and it doesn't have to always be viewed as elitism. I think that, because of the way we've been indoctrinated on campus, especially like within, the European binary trap is what I like to call it. Like when we start viewing everything through their lens, then we start looking at some of our systems and our practices like, oh, that's elitist, or that's hierarchical, or it's like, nah, there's hierarchy within nature.
So glad you brought
there's hierarchy within the cosmos. Like, this is just like, so like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to go off topic, even though this is off topic. I'm supposed to allow you to go off topic, not me. So
yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think the other thing is, like you mentioned, throwing out the proverbial baby with the bathwater. I think that's another way that we that they kind of get us, because it's like, oh, in general, when they say left, you can go right, but you don't want to react and go right. You want to think about it for a second first, because it might be a situation where, like, it's a psyop, and you got to really be able to, assess and analyze the situation. And I feel like, I like to look into definitions of words, but I also consider the connotation heavily, because you have to deal with both, like, what do people associate this with? So for me, a huge aspect of my work is creating language within the colonized tongue, because we have to transition ourselves. Everybody's not going to just start speaking Medunetter like in the next year. So I consider the exclusivity significant because of what I call sacred strategy. Like, this work is rooted in ritual. So there's the reality of like, there's the aspect of like, there are people who are called for this, but there's also the reality that like, there's people who can choose it, but they have to prove it. And it's not proving it to like anyone, it's proving it to themselves.
Yeah.
Like, are you ready to heal? Are you ready to build? Are you ready to lead? And how are you showing that? How are you embodying that? How are your choices aligning with that, right? Because ancestrally, it's all about being ma'akeru, being true of word and deed, not just saying things. And going back to what you were saying about like people getting all this information, there's a lot of people like you say something to them, which at this point I'm just all about saying less, but you can say things to certain people, and because they heard it before, even though they didn't embody it, they didn't put it into practice or anything, they can be that dismissive because they didn't really integrate it into their lives. And in this case, like, this eliminates that, process. It's just, take it to a ritual, but people can choose, right? No one's entitled to anything. You could be called for this work, but you could be making choices that don't allow you to align with certain things that are for you. It really is about like the choices we make. So it goes back to that power and responsibility that we do have within the control that we have, but being able to honor and acknowledge, I can be at rest with what is out of my control. That's one of the things I say every day. When things do not go my way, I listen and trust Netta will align the best possible way. Ashe. Because that's how you hold both. Like, yes, I'm still going to wield my will, but when things don't go my way, I don't get emotional about it. Even if I do, I use that emotion or interpret that emotion as a cue to direct me to what I need to deal with within myself because of wherever that discomfort is coming from. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, being clear and upfront about that, because I think they've created that connotation because they have a virtue and vice system. So they want people to consistently associate certain things as being wrong and certain things with being right. And that's not the reality of Ma'at. That's not the reality of truth. The reality is you have to be able to synthesize. That's why consciousness is important, because you have to be present. Like, to be conscious, you have to be present, and you have to be able to evaluate within a moment what to do. I always use the example of like patience. Patience is a virtue. Okay, but your house is on fire. Like, is that the moment for, patience, or you really have to have a sense of urgency in that moment? So that's a good way for people to just think about it. Like, nothing is right all the time and nothing is wrong all the time.
Yeah.
So it's another thing that can be shed. So when it comes to hierarchy, the way we've been experiencing it has been very problematic. But from our trauma, we don't just throw that out. Like, there's order in everything. You have a food chain in nature. You have, various dimensions, and everything is not on the same level. I like to look at the wolf pack, as, anpu, discernment. In our ancestral context, that's how you have good judgment, but it's also about discipline. And I think that the reason why a lot of people don't like hierarchy is because a lot of people don't want to be obedient. A lot of people don't want to surrender, and I get why, but again, I feel like it's because of that pain. And that's why healing is very important, because we can't move from fear and, just because I feel like that's what the trauma ultimately creates. It creates a fear of experiencing that thing again. But then ultimately that fear just constantly vibrates out and reproduces and recycles itself. So you end up just creating that trauma over and over and over again. Excuse me. So Yeah, I wanted to go a little deeper into Tehuti Ma'at and the work
Go
that we
ahead.
are doing,
Go
because
ahead.
there are people who just by hearing these things, because like we're at that point now, like this is the point where like the ethers, the energies are all this whole experience, your ancestors, like stop playing, like playtime is over. I've been funny enough, I know you like music and hip
Hmm.
hop, so you know Jada Kiss has that song with Nate Dogg, and he's like,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time is
yeah. Time
up,
is
so
up.
bring the heat,
Yeah.
playtime is over.
So,
That's been my anthem for the
let's see,
last moon
call my
cycle.
bluff, start acting up, and I'll leave you underground.
Yeah, because it's just
My
like it's
joint.
that's where we're at right now. Like
He said,
everything,
I know how to get my peers off. You make them cry, die from high blood pressure because tears
that's
is
tears of
falling. Yeah, I mean, that's my joint.
yeah. So I just been thinking about that. Like that's the energy we're in right now. And so we kind of been coming into it, but now it's like it's here. Like I feel
Hmm.
officially as of this like new moon cycle, like playtime is over. So a lot of these people that been playing, like move out the way because the real ones is showing up. Because we've been
Yeah,
healing, we've been doing certain work, but it's like, okay, now it's time to actually like everyone is not here to lead, which is something I actually want to talk to you about because I would love talking. Speaking of content, we're putting together a panel for Think. It's called the Marketing of Misleadership, and I would love to have you on that panel.
I'm on it.
And yeah, I want to see if you have any other people to suggest for that. But this is the moment for like that, like separating the real from the fake, and it's not really about like calling people
I
out
love
or
that you called it separating the real from the fake because I've been battling with this with the coming forth of the metaverse, right? And separating the real from the fake, right? You talk about rap. I think Havoc has a line where he says, in one of his joints, he says, they see the cheese, but they don't see the trap. Not a real live cat, but a real live
yeah,
rat, right? So I think that when it comes to the metaverse, a lot of our people see the cheese, right? They see the opportunity. Oh, I can get rich off these NFTs. I can run up a bag. I can build my own universe in the metaverse. And it was like, okay, yeah, you see the cheese, but do you see the trap? Do you understand why this is being brought forth at this moment in time? Do you understand what they are
yeah,
attempting to stave off? Like how you mentioned, like they understand our shit, like they understand the energies, they understand the cycles, right? So because you are out of tune with the time and the cycle, like you're looking at this like, oh, I can finally get some money, but it's like, nah, like this ain't it. Like this is like you see the cheese, but you don't see the trap. So when you say separating the real from the fake, I think we gotta do that right now. And there has to be a
yeah.
separating of the wheat from the chaff right now. It's significant.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I really appreciated seeing your platform come forward, because I feel like you kept using that reference of like you're not gonna, like if you don't put the clean glass, you're not gonna realize that glass is filthy.
Hmm.
And you know, I just think that
Shout out to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because that's his dialectic. He created put the clean glass of water next to the dirty glass and let the people
mhm,
choose. So
yeah. And I think that the whole thing is really like it's time to tap in. Like the only way for you to go into wholeness is within yourself. But the way that they have us trapped is because of those shadows I was talking about. Like just people are tethered to their system. And I don't mean their system in terms of like the institutions they've created, although that is the case as well. I'm just trying to take us beyond the veil and into the unseen dimension. And in the unseen, people are tethered because of the things that they have done that they don't want. Like, your secrets, right? Those skeletons in the closet, like
mhm.
that trauma and those things, like that's what that is. It becomes those ways that they can kind of like those spirits can attach themselves to you. And the only way to deal with it is to not run away from that and to really like confront that so that it has no power over you.
Mm.
Because like I always think about Baba Amos Wilson and the Blueprint for Black Power, which, speaking of content as well, for Think, I really want to circle back and bring the study sessions for Blueprint for Black Power back in as well, because that book is so significant in our perspective and analyzing the power dynamics that we've experienced and how we can analyze it, how we even define it. And he talks a lot about power over, and there's different forms of power, but like I'm mentioning this now because it's like the energy can have power over you, and the way that it continues to exist is through, or it's most effective through the ways that you're not aware of it. Like you don't see the power they have over you.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like I said, they have no power. Like in the we just did a live stream, Think Beyond Sustainability. I mentioned Ma'a.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. Good thing.
Yeah.
So glad you tapped in. So Ma'a, she was married to Dr. Sebi for 30 years. She's the one who was part of creating all the compounds, and the legacy that we accredit to Dr. Sebi is really that of the fig tree and the two of them coming together. And Dr. Sebi always acknowledged that as well. But I wanted to lift that because I was having a conversation with her a couple moons ago, and she was like, they don't have power. Because I started to say the powers that shouldn't be, because you know how they say, or the powers that won't be.
Yeah.
And she was just like, but they don't even have power. So I was like, oh, I got to go back to the drawing board on this one. So I'm like, okay, the parasites that won't be, because the reality is the power is ours that we're giving them. And that's why I'm saying like the spiritual nature of everything has shifted. So we're going to start to see it come down into the physical reality. And I feel like that's why this word right now is going to resonate with certain people very deeply, because everything in their life has been preparing them for this moment, right? For us to like actually see like, okay, we got to stop playing. Like, are we serious about like a Pan-African world order, regardless of like these other narratives and other things that's trying to stray away from, because that's the inheritance.
Really quick. A lot of people quote Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and they have no idea of the depth of her work, where she says our responsibility, like she was always really big on talking about our cosmic assignment, right? Like that's one of the things, if you were one of her students.
The ISIS papers.
The ISIS papers, right? Was one of the people who was very big. Hold on really quick. I want to just give y'all the ISIS papers. I don't want to cover her name, but she was very, very big on talking about our cosmic assignment as a people. And one of the points that she raises is that our job is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. Well, what do you think she means? She's talking about ushering in an African world order, or a Pan-African world order that is based on the principles of Ma'at, right? That's what Mama Marimba Ani says that too. Like we have the responsibility of ushering in an African world order, right, to replace the system of European disorder that currently has control on the planet, but not power. We have the power. You understand what I'm saying? So,
what
was that?
So they're scrambling. That's why
they're scrambling hard to maintain it right now, because what people don't understand, and this takes us off on it, like, and I don't want to go too far off down this tangent, but like, people do not understand when they talk about the social sciences or behavioral sciences, right? All of these disciplines are created to control the most important piece of technology on this planet, which is the human being. They're trying to figure out how to hack your psychology, how to hack your biology, right? When you have people like B.F. Skinner talking about the need for the creation of a behavioral technology. I mean, what do you think marketing and advertising,
they have to say what they're doing? That's the other thing that we have to know. They have to say it, because like I said, Tehuti is Tehuti. They operate under those universal laws.
Yeah.
So Tehuti is the word, it's the scribe, that's why they document everything. Because you ever wonder, like, okay, you did this whole scandalous ass thing. Why did you even write that? Why did you even keep that on the record for that to even come out?
Part arrogance, part ignorance. part arrogance, part ignorance. So that gets me sometimes, right? When people be thinking of like these grand schemes in terms of how they're trying to hide who we are, it's like, yo, we're really Native Americans, and they're just. I'm like, yo, do you realize that these fools document everything? Like they literally document. Like they don't have a need to lie to you about who you are. Well, they do on a deeper level. Yes, the system has to lie to you about who you are, right? In terms of you being a god. Yeah, I mean, like in terms of you being the cosmic power on the planet. They have to lie to you about that, right? So that's on a more deeper esoteric level. But in terms of domination, these people have committed wholesale genocide on entire swaths of populations across this world. So they don't lie about it. They document it. They say this is how we do it, and this is how we can get more efficient at it, because they're still in that process. Like everything that they create from their worldview is a tool of death, right? They're very cold and calculative. Like, okay, how do we perfect this killing machine? Like, you understand? So everything that they create is an instrument to usher in more death. You know what I mean? To usher in their reality, which is the reality of death. So
yeah, this piece that you're on right now that you brought up is really, really important, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. I know you didn't want to go too off topic or too off on that tangent, but it's important for us to really know that, like, they're doing what they're designed to do. They're doing what they're here to do. Like, this is their purpose. And, you know, there's life and there's death. That's the reality. The problem becomes when we are operating within their nature. That's what's creating the tilted scale. So we have to really focus on making sure we are doing what we're here to do. That's what creates the equilibrium. Because ancestrally, when you're dealing with Set, like I said, is gravity. But Set is like that European nature. Set is gravity, but you also, like, it has to be controlled, right? Our ancestors used to have the Wa scepter in Kemet, which was a scepter that represented having dominion over Set, dominion over your higher and lower self, or over your lower self, right? Because you still have to wield it. You don't throw it out, like I said. Like, you gotta be able to use that part of you. You have to be able to control that aspect. So Set's not designed to be the one running shit. You get what I'm saying? Like, Set can't be in that position. So even in the mythology, when you had the reign of Set, right? And I'm just gonna share it like loosely for people who are not familiar with like the ancient symbology of that story of Set and Heru. It's the story that all of the religions have tried to, you know, take from in order to keep us spiritually enslaved to the religions. You got the Isis papers there, and I just keep thinking about, like, okay, Isis is the Greek word for Aust. Isis and Osiris is what most people may be able to like find a lot of information about, but it's important for us to reclaim the ancestral tongue and that original vibration. Yeah, so it's Aust and Asar. So it's Aust, Asar, and Heru, the original Trinity, the original Holy Family. Aust, Asar, and Heru. Yes, and that's so important for us to know this story, because this is the prophecy that we're living in right now. This is what's happening. And when you have the, so Aust and Asar were considered to be the first king and queen of Kemet, because they were, and I don't like to use the word king and queen or even ruler, but they were the first leaders, right, of Kemet, or what ended up becoming, Kemet, because essentially that story was carried even from like the Ethiopian origin of, the more southern cradle.
Yeah.
But within that, you had these two leaders, this couple that comes and leads the people by teaching them how to sow the seeds. They brought the art and the science of agriculture to the people. This was so significant, which there's a lot to be said about like where they came from, the cosmic origins, right? Because Aust is associated with Sabu Septa or Sirius, and Asar is associated with the constellation of Orion, right? So the Orion's belt, Asar's belt, the three stars that the great pyramids or Merkuts and Kemet are aligned with. All of this is very significant for us to know because, like I said, as above, so below. And the mythology is actually a reflection of the astronomy, which connects to us through the astrology, right? How do we see, how do these influence us? So Aust and Asar bring the art and the science of agriculture. The people at that point were nomadic, right? They had to hunt and gather, and that's how people ate. So we were very nomadic and there was a lot of movement. We have the basis of civilization that we have today because of agriculture.
Yes.
That is very significant. And that's why ancestrally you had the Nesubiti or the pharaoh holding, I want to actually show an image of it, the Hek and NeferKa, which are the crook, or they call it the crook and the flail, which are farming tools. All of the symbolism in Kemet is really represented through, I guess I can show this. See how he's holding the crook and the flail? This is Asar.
Yeah.
Shout out to Kemetic kids who created this deck. I love it. It's a good way if you want to like start learning the symbolism or teaching it to your children. But I wanted to show the crook and the flail because they are significant to us realizing the importance of, here it is, the Hek and NeferKa. The crook represents leadership and the flail represents authority. So think about in the context of what we're talking about with complementary energy, you have like masculine and feminine, right? Active and receptive. You have the crook, one is used to gather and the other one is used to move, right? Especially with animal husbandry, when you're like moving cattle, things along those lines. So this like glorious golden age of humanity was rooted in agriculture because through that ability to stay in one place and cultivate land, right, because of the inundation or the flood of the Hapi or the Nile, you had people able to actually stay in one place. That's how we get the architecture. That's how we get the astrology and the ability to observe from one place, to observe nature and to create the sacred science of spirituality that we have today. That is the basis of the science that they consider to be science, which is a whole nother thing. I don't want to get deep into that, but I just want to raise the story so you know, like the leadership was based on the ability to serve the people, right? Because the people have to eat. So you had these two leaders take position and they become the king and the queen. We'll use that word for now. So you have this dynamic. Then you have Set, who is the brother of Asar, who is jealous. And Set becomes, like I was telling y'all about gravity, but Set is also where they get the word Satan or Satesh, right? It's Satan, the devil, Lucifer, right? That concept in the Christian context. And it's really important for us to know that that energy was jealous, right? So Cain and Abel, you can think of all the stories, the way they've created this story over and over again. Matrix brought up that movie. Like the reality is it's one story that they keep trying to like retell in a different way, but it's not going to change the reality of the prophecy unfolding. And so you had Set, think about it in the context I was talking before, this European consciousness, or the energy, their nature, deceives the brother, kills him, Asar, the king, and chops his body up into 14 pieces and scatters it.
Mm-hmm.
You have Aust and Neferkha, who is the wife of Set, come together with Aust. They mourn together. Neferkha is the principle of sisterhood. She's also the principle of death and decay, and like she's more of like that energy of like kind of like these other necessary, more grotesque aspects of our existence, but very venerated and necessary. So they come together to find the pieces of Asar's body. They find 13 pieces except for the phallus, or the henenum, what people call the penis.
Yeah.
Even think about vibration. Henenum, penis. Henenum, penis, right? Like all of this is significant when you just even think about the resonance of like, what are these words we're saying? Anyway, you have that piece that's missing. Some people say Aust fashions it out of clay. Some people say it was carved out of stone or wood. Either way, she puts that phallic piece together. Her spirit ascends over his body in falcon form. And you have the first immaculate conception. She becomes impregnated by the spirit of Asar, who resurrects. And their child, Heru, is born, who goes and does battle with his uncle and takes the throne, right? But for that period, you have the uncle on the throne, right? Because Heru has to grow up and he has to be raised and all these things happen. There's so many aspects of this story. These are our prophecies. And when we think about it, I lifted Baba Heru's spirit earlier because Baba Heru, who's still alive, by the way, he's in New York at the Shrine of Ptah, the studio of Ptah, for anyone who wants to look into him. But Baba always described this story to me as the 13 pieces of Asar's body are the 13 pieces that Africa was carved into during the Berlin Conference, when the European powers carved Africa into the 13 colonies. And that unification of Asar's body is the significance of the unification of the great continent that we called NfrKa, which Baba says NfrKa because that literally translates into flesh and soul of the living sun. That's significant because a lot of people like try to create arguments around like, should we use the word Africa? We have to have transitional things. Like the reality is that's how we connect with the word. And like Baba gave that aspect of it. And I was like, of course, like it makes sense. We could just put more energy and intention around how we say it to honor the actual meaning of the vibration NfrKa.
Yeah.
So I talked about the Ka earlier being the spirit. Ra is the sun, right, the flesh. So that being said, what is that 14th piece? The phallic piece, the henenum, right? The erection, right? Because we have to be really clear. There's a lot of villainization of the divine masculine energy, and we have to put it in its proper position because it's very important. Most of the Nesubiti, or the leaders of Kemet, during those 3 millennia were males, not females. You did have Hatshepsut. You did have certain queens who took the throne and ruled as Nesubiti, but for the most part, it was the man, and they carried the twins on their crown, the vulture and the cobra, to represent the divine, 2 aspects of the divine feminine energy, because it was still honored and respected that the power of the male energy is to assert. And I say that because like we have to think about it from the context of the erection. And I did a reading, speaking of content, we timed the content in here.
Mm-hmm.
I did a reading for this moon cycle for February. And that was the last card of the moon cycle for this, of the energy of this cycle, was Amsu, which is represented by that like erection and just that creative force and energy that the male energy represents. And that's really important for us because that energy is the seed, you know, like it really is the seed, right? Even thinking about in conception, like you must have the sperm to fertilize the egg. So it is important to think about what is the nature of that, right? To erect, right? To bring something, there's something energetically about that we have to be conscious of. I don't want to define it so much because we just know what it is. And that piece that's missing is significant because Baba interprets it, and it resonates with me deeply, that represents the fashioning or the unification of the diaspora or the diaspora of the continent. All of the children of Africa that are colonized in various parts of the planet.
That's heavy.
Together.
That's
so
heavy.
The Pan-African reality, right? The reality of unifying all of the children of Africa is very important because we hold a very important position because of the consciousness we're able to have, the access to certain resources that we have. And there's just a unique aspect of the resilience that created the people who came through the Ma'afa.
Wow, that's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Y'all got to share this. Y'all have like these are the types of activating conversations that our people need to be hearing. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like this is what needs, like this is what the platform is for. You know what I mean? Like I said, like I told you at the beginning, I look for opportunities to slide the medicine, you know, into the candy, and this is one of those opportunities. Like and like I just feel like these are the conversations that are just so significant for this time. So I appreciate you bringing
important.
This.
It's important for us to know, like I think about like Lauryn Hill, for example, as a prophetess. You know, a lot of times we think of things, even though she was still and may still be in that Christian psychosis, the reality,
the energy of it, the resonance of what she's saying, even through that particular translation, if you have the energy, if you have the eyes to see, you see what it is. Yeah, I mean, if it's going to speak to you. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but like it's going to speak to you if you have the software to pick up what's being said.
Exactly, because everything's not for everyone. Like if you get it, if you're here, like if you're here, you get it. Like not everyone. What do they say? Many are called, but few are chosen. And the reality is, like, we do the choosing. Like, what do you choose to do? And I just think about the reality of like what happens when we know the prophecy is, we know that we have won. We know Asar resurrects and births Heru, and Heru goes to battle and takes back the throne. That's what we're talking about right here.
That's why this energy, I mean, they tell you in their stories, they're so focused. All right. So I was saying that, you know, they tell you in their stories or in their mythology, right? The focus on killing the sons. You understand what I'm saying? Because they understand that rebirth, that energy is going to come. But I think that they've trapped us into this Messiah complex where they got you waiting on an individual, like an individual person. But it's like, no, like that's why in my book I have an essay called Death of the Messiah Complex, because it's not one person. It's more of a generation or a frequency or a point in the cycle that is going to be embodied in it's going to be a collective energy. It's not going to be, and I think that so many of us in our community, what goes back to that ego leadership, right? So many of us think that the Haru or the Messiah is going to be this individual. So because people feel as though they have a measure of that spirit, they're looking at everybody else like their competition. Well, like you can't be the Messiah because I'm the Messiah. People are supposed to be following me. So if they're listening to you, then no, like, because I know I'm the creator's
That's a
talking.
real complex right there.
What was that? What was
What
that?
you described there, like that's really a Messiah complex, because like what we're talking about when we talk about like the Messiah, like I want to put in the context of the Christ,
Mm-hmm.
because the idea of the Christ consciousness is to be able to tap into the spirit of Heru.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about a desire to, it's about an anointing. Not everybody came for that.
Yeah.
That's the other part. And they trapped us in this concept of story. We have to reclaim myth, because
Yeah.
like I said, this is based on astrology. This is constantly happening. It happens in cycles, and it happens, and the energy comes back and it recirculates, and the story takes different forms. That's why even when you think about the mythology, like I said, some people say she fashioned it out of stone, some people say it was clay, some people say it was wood, because it's happened many times and it's happened in many ways, and we are the energies.
I
We're
mean,
living.
if you just think about it, that's why I always mention, never go too deep, but I always talk about the collective that you brought me into, the Navigating Eternity Collective, which I'm
Mhm.
very grateful to be a part of. But when you think about the fact that right now we are at an exact point in the solar system, right? We're moving, but this point that we are, like you said, it comes around cyclical. So it's power in understanding where we are and where the energy is and what's being brought forth at this, or what's being called forth at this very moment that we exist in. And like you said, the that opposing energy understands very well where we are. So they are trying their hardest to forestall the inevitable. Like, but no, y'all are done with. Like we already understand. That's why like having that victorious mindset, that victorious consciousness is about being tapped in and understanding the cyclical nature of things, because when you understand
Mhm.
it, then you can kind of stand where you are supposed to stand in this moment to do what you've been called forth to do, right? And then
Yeah.
that breaks you free from the fear paradigm, because the way that they control us is through the so-called power of death. They're like, all right, well, we'll kill. But when you understand that they don't
Mhm.
have like, even our understanding of death like has to be radically transformed. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't like I said, me and you, because our energies are so like, I think that we
Yeah.
can go in a lot of just different directions with this
But I
conversation.
think what you mentioned is important, because like the work that we're doing is really an orientation process, right? Like everything has to be adjusted, and it's going to happen in waves of, so everybody, like this might not make sense or connect with someone right now because it's not supposed to, but maybe they go through certain things that allow them to come back into it. Doesn't mean that the work is not for them. It's not for them right now. And I think Tehuti really becomes about, like, to embody Tehuti, I must overstand time. That's what I was talking about earlier about choice and power. And I was saying, like, we actually only choose how long it takes. It's because of time being colonized for us. And we're seeing time because we've been enslaved, and our labor is extracted. And the way that they've been able to do it now is through this mental manipulation to make us connect our time with as a measure of value.
Time
But
is
our
money.
time,
That's the
yeah,
time is money. It's
exactly.
like,
And my brother just said that to me, and I'm just like, we really have to orient ourselves to time as a form of measure, as it always was. That is what revolution is. Like, we have to literally put revolution back on the agenda. Like, the concept of revolution that's been sold to us is not what revolution is. And we know that our planet revolves around Ra, it revolves around the sun, but somehow, and I think that's one of the most deeply seated, and I know that that's part of my message that's so important, is really looking at what they've deeply seeded into our psyche around evolution
I
and
might
the
have to,
idea of how
might have,
things grow.
might have to have you co-author my text with me. So what I'm writing right now, and this might be an Aust and an Omowale production, right? We may have to
I'll
co-author this
put
because
it.
I think that the energies are too complementary. I don't know. We gonna have to talk offline.
Yeah. It's so funny because like I remember I always say to you, like every time I think about it, it just for me, because I remember when I first started seeing, like I saw you on a panel with someone else, and I just remember like for me, like I'm already like I'm just receiving from there directly.
Hmm.
And it's just like I just knew like there's this twin like aspect of like the work that you're doing, the way that you think and articulate, like that's always been something that I've been aware of. Like
Hmm.
just, oh, I'm like, okay, I'll just wait, like you just allow things to happen and things to align. But I do think that that's just something intrinsic in terms of like you and I, even what we were talking about earlier with our stories. And
Yeah.
that's why I was saying the energy is not to be taken literally, it's to be taken symbolically, because that complementarity, they get us in this idea of like, um, constantly thinking from a sexual lens
Hmm.
as opposed to an energetic lens. And that's how we have to begin to look at complementarity. Everybody that you connect with and deeply resonate with doesn't mean you can have sex with them.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to say that because I feel like that's what's keeping us back is the fact that they have us trapped energetically in those lower aritu or energy centers, right? What they
Lower
call the chakra.
vibrations. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep us trapped in the root by constantly putting us in a state of survival where we have to just focus on the basic things we need to survive. And then that sexual energy being highly overstimulated. So we're not really building together in the way that we're supposed to, because we really are supposed to be aligning, because some interpretations of the story, they say that Aust and Asar were brother and sister, which they all are because technically they're children of Ra, the sun. You can't
Yeah.
take that literally. Like the sun had these 4 children. Like it's not about literal, it's about the symbolism of it. And it is important to think about masculine and feminine energy or male and female within the context of our original nature and not within the context of this, over sexualized reality, because this is important for us to remember moving forward where we are right now, because we need to be making some powerful connections. And we have to be careful not to, not to like try to romanticize relationships that are not supposed to be. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really important because I've been seeing that in many relationships that I'm having. And I think that that's very important to say. I don't know why. I just felt like it was really important to say because I feel like a lot of people are kind of navigating that, like, just even astrologically, that's actually a thing that's happening during this moon cycle. Just like these, like, work relationships being like, oh, is there something else there? Or like, and it's important to just be able to be grounded in the reality that, you know, everybody has an energy and it can be met and complementary with another energy without there being additional,
I,
ties and like
I
just
think
that
that,
sexual component that's just like very thrusted on us in so many ways,
yeah.
and whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But
Listen, no, I think
just
that this is the perfect that is the perfect word to close on. The nomo. I think that's the perfect word right there to let sit and resonate. I'm gonna bring you back for sure.
mhm.
Because I think we got to have many
Okay.
of these conversations. So, and closing,
Yeah.
if there's anything that you want to share in terms of how people can find
Yes.
you and connect with you, and your platform, high tops and hills, like the
Hmm.
floor is yours to do so.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was going to say, because the whole idea of high tops and heels is actually about that complementary energy. And I think it's very important for us to um, really communicate and connect holding both of those energies and having that complementary energy. And it's not always male and female, because we all have masculine and feminine within us. But it's just the reality of honoring the two perspectives, the active and the receptive, right? The intuitive and the logical. So that's like the premise of High Tops and Heels, but High Tops and Heels is actually a creative communications agency. So we also, we provide services, and that's an aspect that I think is important to highlight, because there are people who are looking to create websites or looking to create legacy, right? Outside of the construct of like branding, but really to create legacy and to create, an identity that is everlasting. In regards to their business and their pursuits and institutions. So we are providing different digital marketing services, creative direction, website design, and things along those lines. But we also have the aspect of the work that's not the agency, but within the agency, we would basically be connecting you with the team of, people of original wisdom, Black creatives who are able to create the content and the things that you want to create. And even if that's copy, right? So actually things you need to like write out for different marketing materials you have, all that stuff. So that's the agency. The other aspect are the artifacts, which is what we're really developing out through the network of Tehuti Ma'at, because Tehuti Ma'at is a revolutionary instrument that's designed to build out cooperatives. So one of the cooperative ventures is High Tops and Heels. So the website is hightopsandheels.com. The artifacts are going to be made up of the contributions of the people who are in the Tehuti Ma'at militia, which if you resonated with just like on a spiritual note around the work and the perspectives and the things that were shared, and you feel called to join the militia, you can actually visit tehutimaat.org. And if you go /join, that's where the information about the various ranks of the militia are, to actually build and contribute to Tehuti Ma'at on a more like deeper level. There's an application process for that. But if you're interested in supporting the work or just being initiated into the information and the wisdom, then that's there are levels that you can contribute to be a part of the work in that regard. And yeah, we're just getting ready to come forward with a lot more content, and more so from that collaborative space. I'm not present on social media personally, but you can follow Tehuti Ma'at on social media, on Instagram. And yeah, for me, it's about the work, and yeah, so if you want to connect with me, it's because you want to build. I'm not interested in connecting with anyone who's not here to bring forward the African world revolution. So let's build.
Let's build. All right. Hold on 1 second. I gotta do it.
Yo, check this out. Run my Uncle Omowale his likes.
If you are here for the first time, family, please go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go over to High Tops and Heels and subscribe to my sister Aust NeferKa's channel as well. And I appreciate y'all tapping in, and we out. Peace.
Blessings.
Going off topic.
Off topic.
You really off topic right now. Yo, you way off topic. How is it that everybody's over here and you way over there off topic?